barely making it through the Shabbat service when I observed Yortzeit for my father. Now at least my weight is stabilized. Although I must start a tremendous effort to regaining weight, and I am on a maintenance dose of cortisone until I return to New York. The doctor here said he never saw anything like what has attacked my legs, and after hearing the total situation, suggested admittance into a hospital for 2-3 months of tests. That isn't feasible, but testing will begin once I return. He died of AIDS.
So Michael died that winter, and his death announcement was the first of dozens and dozens that appeared in the CBST newsletter. I want to invite Sarah Krulwich to read a piece that she wrote as her Yizkor talk on Yom Kippur in 2006.
I had a large family, all of whom were married, having children or on their way to these typical signs of heterosexual adulthood. At least I could find refuge with my cousin Teddy Krulwich, who was also gay. He and his blonde, non-Jewish boyfriend would go to CBST every Friday night. Ted found out that he had AIDS, and after a very brief struggle with the disease, he died. He was 34, and he had never really come out. He first introduced his lover to his family at the very end of his life. He didn't tell anyone at work that he was gay. He didn't tell any of his gay friends that he was sick. His death shocked all of his friends and associates because in the end they realized that no one really even knew who he was. When Ted died, CBST had no rabbi. So Ted's parents asked their Orthodox rabbi to officiate at his funeral. The service was unbelievably painful. The rabbi refused to mention that Ted was gay and made no mention of his lover Bruce. The service totally denied who Ted was and failed to honor his life. The worst was, Ted was buried by a man who hated that he was gay. But I guess Ted's death had one positive benefit. It propelled me out of the closet. I decided to change my future. I realized that everybody was hurt by Ted's refusal to be honest about his life. And I learned that being closeted wasn't really a gift to anyone.
Ted died in 1987 as the deaths from AIDS escalated rapidly, and it was at that point where the lay leadership of the show, which of course at that point had been entirely lay-led, after the volunteer religious leadership of its initial charismatic Rebbe figure, it was led entirely by lay people, and the ritual committee handled all of the religious life of the synagogue and also all life cycle events. The burden became too heavy, and Saul Zolkin and others created a Bikur Cholim committee, but still it was too much, and the discussion arose and intensified about the need to hire a rabbi. And many people have said that it is unlikely that the decision would have come at that time to hire a rabbi if not for AIDS, if not for the need to have someone to help a community being devastated by loss after loss after loss after loss. And so after much discussion and debate, the decision was made to look for a rabbi, which in itself was quite a story. I want to invite Art Leonard, where are you, to come up and read the press release announcing the search for the rabbi of CBST. And I should say that Art was one of the chairs of the Rabbinic Search Committee. Roseanne is the other.
Hello, Roseanne. Okay, so this, I originally drafted this, but it is a committee product. Everything that went out from this committee was hashed over and amended and everything else. So, yeah. Yeah, that's worse. Okay, so I'll read it from here. And I'm taking off my glasses because I can't read with my glasses if the print is small. So the headline is, New York's Gay and Lesbian Synagogue seeks to hire its first rabbi. Congregation Beth Simchat Torah, CBST, the egalitarian gay and lesbian synagogue serving the greater New York City area, has initiated a nationwide search to hire its first rabbi. Founded in 1973, the 1,150-member congregation made the decision to hire a rabbi after more than a year of study and discussion by the congregants and the Board of Trustees. Quote, our continued growth, the diversity of our members, and the increasing need for counseling and spiritual guidance in this time of the AIDS crisis have created the desire among the board and the congregation for a full-time rabbi to provide pastoral care and spiritual leadership, explained Arthur Leonard, co-chair of the Rabbi Search Committee. Quote, we believe that this position offers a unique opportunity to a progressive rabbi who would enjoy the challenges and rewards our synagogue has to offer, added Roseanne Leipzig, the committee's other co-chair. I think I wrote both of those quotes, but then they were all amended in committee discussion. Since CBST is an unaffiliated synagogue, the congregation welcomes applicants from all backgrounds. The congregation is seeking an ordained rabbi with a minimum of 2 years of pulpit experience and a willingness to share the pulpit with lay leaders. Until now, congregants at CBST have conducted all services, and men and women participate on an equal basis. The congregation has adapted traditional liturgy and a wide spectrum of religious and cultural observances in order to meet the diverse needs of its members. And people who are interested were told to submit a resume or an indication of interest no later than June 1, 1991, to me at New York Law School. We conducted the whole search out of my office at New York Law School.
Turn to the book to see the full saga of the search and hiring process, and then came time for the installation, and with it some other changes. And I'm going to invite Sandy to come up and read her story of how she got to CBST.
I was down in the village one day in August of 1992 and read that Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum was going to be installed at CBST. I felt that this was a great feminist happening and decided to go. I sat in the back of the room over there near what was a hospitality corner, displaying all kinds of flyers about what was happening in the synagogue. One of the flyers was about the feminist minyan, although it wasn't called that yet. It was Lesbian Voices. I thought this would be an interesting reason to come back, and that was how I came back to CBST. I had a prayer I wanted to use for a buddy I lost, and at the Feminist Minyan they let me read it. I thought, okay, this is a place where I can be. At that time, the Feminist Minyan met once a month, and afterwards we would go out to dinner. A couple of members of the Minyan used to stay for Friday night services. One night, I decided to stay. I sat next to Nancy Mertzel, who pointed out to me that moving into the Maharuv service, the Borchu was like saying, hey God, I'm here. So now, when we get to the Borchu, every now and then I'll say, hey God, I'm here. I grew up as a revolving door Jew, in on Rosh Hashanah and out on Yom Kippur. So I wasn't used to Friday night services. Even now, when we sing some of the prayers, especially the Kabbalat Shabbat service, I say, oh, I remember learning this. This was the first one that I learned at CBST. So I began through the Feminist Minyan and then continued through Friday night services to deepen my own Judaism. It was a fine place for me to be, because I was in transition as a lesbian. The synagogue was in transition, and it was a nice place to transition. The feminist minyan became my base. I got to know Yolanda Podzinski, Tamara Cohn, the sister of Rabbi A.L. Cohn, Roseanne Leipzig, Regina Lindsay, and Lisa Edwards, who is now a rabbi in Los Angeles. And that is how I integrated into this beautiful center.
So as the years went by, there were many changes, and some people came and some people went, but some people have been here all the time. And I invite Saul Mizrahi to come up. This is how Saul got to CBST.
Oh, thank you. I just want to take a note of personal privilege. I came here from the very beginning, and I'm going on 42 years now. I told everyone I came when I was age 12, so they couldn't figure out how old I am. And I'm still personal friends with Jacob Goubet and Rabbi Merling and Jerry Cunningham. These are the originals. They don't come anymore, but I have no social life, so I'm here every Friday. And one of the things that I incorporated the synagogue, and not to incorporate, but I got a golden rose, and I belong to 10 synagogues. But this golden rose, which is pure gold and with silver leaves, nicer than the one in the opera and the Rosenkavalier, I said, which shul is worthy of this pure rose? And only CBST, because I was like, in the movie, the Ten Commandments, Seti says to Moses, I saw your greatness above all other men, and I saw it in CBST, a greatness above all other synagogues. Therefore, you get that golden rose, which we still show on Shabbat, on Shavuot. So thank you for that little introduction. And I'd like to read up my close-up. It wasn't that little, forgive me. Okay. It used to be that you were either a religious Jew or you were gay. Not both. You do your job all day, you see your family, you keep your mouth shut. Then you run to CBST and you can be who you really are in all the fullness of your dimension. Turn to page 158, you'll see me in my costume, so you'll know what I'm talking about. At CBST, you can hold on to 3,000 years of religious belief, which you have to do if you're gay because you are so persecuted. At the same time, you're also able to dress up like Queen Esther. I won all the Queen Esther contests, by the way. Okay. In the old days, I always played Queen Esther in the Purim plays. Everyone was in costume, and the songs were in Yiddish. Phil Katz, an active member back then, wrote 99% of them, and they were fantastic. Recently on Purim, I was dressed up in my beautiful costume, and a little boy said, "Wow," to borrow the rabbi's word, "Wow." I replied, "Who are you? You look like a wizard." And he said, "I'm Dumbledore." And I thought, maybe that's what it's all about. He loved my costume, and I loved his. He's a little doll, a little munchkin. I recognized that, and I said, it's a blessing. At first at CBST, we had only 10 men and 1 woman. And from there, we have all these beautiful kids. What nachas, that's CBST's evolution.
Asaf Ostrensky to read how he got to CBST. When he told this story, he was actually living in Israel, but we've since brought him back.
How I got to CBST. I went to a 20-something group at the center where I met Robert Eppenstein, who told me about CBST. The first time I went to a service, the room was packed. It was like nothing I'd ever been to before. I didn't grow up religious, but I liked all the singing. That's what made me feel at home. We used to sit in the back row over there. They called us the boys in the back. Robert, Daniel Chesser, and Ian Turan. Pretty quickly, that was what I was doing every Friday night. There were other people like me and other young people. It was a community, a way of feeling Jewish and accepted and welcomed. Daniel and Ian asked me to sing one of the Sheva Brachot at their wedding. After the wedding, Rabbi Kleinbaum said, "You should join the chorus." I wasn't interested. The chorus was just getting started and they were mostly singing in unison. Rabbi Kleinbaum hounded me week after week until I finally spoke to Joyce. I joined the chorus. It was an amazing experience. I said to myself, what was I thinking that I didn't want to do this? They held classes for people who wanted to become lay service leaders. At first, it didn't even occur to me that I could do that. I was very scared of public speaking and of being on stage. So the course helped me a lot in terms of gaining confidence. To be up there and lead congregation in prayer, I felt people were with me. It was a real kavod. All my great friends who played such a central role in my life came from CBST.
So CBST, of course, was a place where members wanted to celebrate the significant moments in their lives. And in the early days, that didn't happen quite as frequently as it does now. And everything required a conversation. So I'm going to invite Roseanne to tell some of the story of her Brit Ahava.
This is third person. Most members associate up here. Okay, Yehuda, is this how you do it? Okay. Most members associate the first CBST wedding with the controversy that arose in 1988 when Dr. Roseanne Leipzig and Ora Chaikin, then known as Judy Mabel, announced their intention to celebrate their Brit Ahava, literally covenant of love. At that time, at a time when gay life was still criminalized and marginalized, most gay men and lesbians believed that being out of the closet meant that neither legal nor religious marriage was a right that was available to them. Some considered gay wedding ceremonies as simply aping heterosexual customs and abandoning gay culture. Others believed that same-sex marriage could not be sanctioned by Jewish law and feared that the practice at CBST would further damage its credibility among Orthodox Jews, alienating the wider Jewish world. While the religious committee had no formal policy relating to commitment ceremonies, many people responded as if there were an unwritten rule against it. Roseanne and Ora had to lobby the board and the religious committee to sanction their ceremony. After some debate, the synagogue ultimately agreed to hold a Brit Ahava for Ora and Roseanne right here at Bethune Street in 1988.
And to read more about that and see some pictures and read Roseanne and Ora's own words, you'll have to look in the book. I want to invite Sarah to come back up. So exactly, it is a multifaceted life.
So I just wanted to say that I have twins and they were born on the very first day that Rabbi Kleinbaum started work here. So it's not mentioned in this book, but I'm telling you all that. So naming our twins. Although we had been members of CBST for years, it wasn't until the birth of our twins, Alan and Samantha, when we really actually needed more than a seat during the high holidays. Now we needed help planning a naming ceremony and ended up calling Rabbi Kleinbaum. A friend summed up the ceremony this way. On the surface, it seemed like a familiar Jewish event with a traditional sounding rabbi. It was only in stepping back that I realized how radical it was for so many people to celebrate a lesbian couple and their new family. It's right here. Oh.
I'm just gonna.
Oh, over here? On the side? Oh, okay. And so the other, this continues. And I'm with my son Alan and his wearing the tallis that he designed for his bar mitzvah, one of two. And Samantha is also with Lynn, my wife, breathing a sigh of relief after the service. So.
And by the way, Alan and Samantha just graduated from college. So one of the wonderful and terrible things about not having organized archives is you're just as likely to not be able to find a document that you are searching for, as to come upon an email that happens to have been saved in a pile of other things, which tells you an amazing insight into the way this community functions. And I invite Eric to come up and read an email that he sent to me in April of 2009.
April 14th, 2009. Dear Rabbi Cohen, sitting with Dick's body last night was quite an experience. 4 years ago, on April 13th, my mother died, and on the 14th, my mother's body was transported to the funeral home where others performed the service of Shmirah for her. Serving as shomer for Dick was a direct way of giving back to those who did this for my mother and for me to remember her. When I arrived, I was taken to a lovely and comfortable sitting room. Dick's body was on a copper table, overlaid with a blanket. I brought 2 books with me, the JPS Tanakh and Paul Manette's Last Watch of the Night. I read from both, sometimes aloud and sometimes silently. I found Psalms I'd never read before, some of which felt deeply relevant and others that didn't. I'm not so comfortable with the ones calling for the destruction of my enemies, but I know that Dick, like me and all gay people, have enemies that are both external and inside us, and we need help with all of them. At some point, my cell phone rang. I thought I turned off the ringer, but I hadn't. It was Rick Redder and Jack Neiman. They asked me if they could come and sit with Dick. They had no idea I was already there, and I was glad to have them relieve me so I didn't have to leave Dick alone with a stranger. This business of community is quite a miracle. There were several times I found myself imagining how to explain to others why I would spend an evening alone with a dead body, reading to it. In a city like New York, this seems so odd and anachronistic. Of course, we don't do it only for the dead, even though our tradition tells us otherwise. We do it for ourselves, to remind us of the people who are important to us, to create continuity, a constant chain of support that will eventually come around to me again the next time someone I love dies, and ultimately for those who love me. I'm glad you arranged for us to have this opportunity.
So this is a community not only of its members and their lives and their stories that are entrusted to all of us as people who have inherited them. And both for members like Dick, who did not leave behind any family and so rely on us to remember them and tell their stories, and members like Annette Miller, who lived through much of the process of this book and contributed in many, many ways, and did leave a family, but also all of us to remember and tell stories, maybe different stories, some of the same stories. Also, the role of our community is to change the world around us, to make sure that what we notice is broken because of the roadblocks that we encounter are not only our own problems and our own issues, but often what is broken in the world around us. And in no small number and in no small part, members of CBST have been hugely instrumental in changing the laws as they affect LGBT people here in New York City, in New York State, and nationally. One of those stories is the story of New York City's domestic partnership bill, and I want to invite Amy Chazanoff to read some of that story. She was one of the plaintiffs in the case.
The Domestic Partnership Bill. Several CBST members played a critical role in the passage of New York City's domestic partnership legislation. In 1998, longtime CBS member Ruth Berman, a guidance counselor at Sheepshead Bay High School, applied for health insurance benefits with Connie Kurtz, a partner of 13 years, and was denied. Ruth and Connie, along with 2 other couples, including myself, were the lead plaintiffs in the New York Lesbian and Gay Teachers Association suit against the city's Board of Education. Paula Edebrick then Lambda Legal Defense Attorney, litigated the case, and Randy Weingarten, then United Federation of Teachers lawyer, negotiated and settled the case as part of the Municipal Labor Committee Dinkins Administration Agreement, making domestic partner benefits a reality for all New York City employees. Art Leonard organized a major public program on family diversity and domestic partnership at the New York City Bar Association that helped launch the campaign for domestic partnership in New York. Meanwhile, Rick Landman was active in the Coalition for Lesbian and Gay Rights, which has been instrumental in passing the city's anti-discrimination legislation. He drafted a domestic partnership bill with 3 other members of CLGR using materials and model legislation designed by Art Leonard. Council member, now U.S. Representative Carolyn Maloney, convened a working group of community representatives to create a domestic partnership bill. A memorandum by Art Leonard defending the bill's constitutionality was attached to the bill Maloney introduced in 1990 to the City Council. That bill laid the foundation for an executive order issued by Mayor Dinkins in October 1993 as part of the settlement of the New York Lesbian and Gay Teachers Association lawsuit, providing domestic partnership benefits for New York City public school teachers and all city employees.
And of course, this major achievement in gay rights was celebrated as everything needs to be celebrated at CBST with a cake. And for a picture of